The iron chains rattled against Willow Harper's wrists as she stood on the auction platform in Idaho City, and the February wind cut through her thin cotton dress like 1,000 knives stabbing her skin all at once. Snow fell in thick sheets across the mining town, covering the muddy streets in a blanket of white that would have been beautiful if Willow had any capacity left to appreciate beauty. She had none. The year was 1875, and she had been traveling west with her uncle when he died of pneumonia 3 weeks prior, leaving her with nothing but his debts. The creditors had seized everything, and when there was nothing left to take, they seized her. Indentured servitude, they called it. Slavery by another name, she thought bitterly as the auctioneer's voice boomed across the crowd of men gathered in the town square. Fine specimen here, gentlemen. Young, healthy, can cook and clean. Starting bid at $50. Willow kept her eyes down, refusing to meet the gazes of the men who looked at her like she was livestock. The cold seeped into her bones, and she wondered distantly if freezing to death might be preferable to whatever fate awaited her. Her dark hair hung limp around her face, and her bare feet had gone numb against the wooden platform hours ago. $50, called a voice from the back. 60, another shouted. The bidding continued, and Willow felt her stomach turn with each increase. She was 20 years old, and this was how her life would end, sold to the highest bidder in the coldest month of the year. Then a voice cut through the crowd, deep and steady. $500. The square went silent. Even the auctioneer seemed stunned. Willow finally looked up, searching for the source of that voice, and her eyes landed on a tall man pushing through the crowd. He wore a heavy sheepskin coat and a black hat pulled low, but she could see the strong line of his jaw and the determined set of his mouth. 500. The auctioneer repeated as if he could not believe his ears. 500, the man confirmed, climbing the steps to the platform. And another 100 for her freedom papers. Draw them up legal. She will not be owned. The crowd murmured, confused and curious. The auctioneer looked at the paper in his hands, then at the stranger, then at the marshal standing nearby. The marshal nodded slowly. That more than covers the debt, the auctioneer admitted. But son, if you are paying for freedom papers, why bid at all? Because I want it done right and legal. I want every man here to know that Willow Harper's debt is paid in full, and she walks away from here a free woman. He turned to look at Willow for the first time, and she saw eyes the color of storm clouds, serious and intense. If she chooses to. Willow could not speak. Her throat had closed up entirely. She watched as the man counted out bills from a worn leather wallet, more money than she had ever seen in one place. The auctioneer took it with trembling hands, and within minutes, papers were being drawn up and signed. The marshal unlocked her chains, and Willow's arms dropped to her sides, weak and aching. She swayed on her feet, and suddenly the stranger was there, steadying her with a hand on her elbow. "Easy," he said quietly. "When did you last eat?" Willow tried to remember and could not. 2 days. 3. "I do not know," she whispered. He nodded as if he had expected that answer. Without another word, he shrugged out of his heavy coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. The warmth was shocking after hours in the cold, and Willow pulled it tight around herself, breathing in the scent of leather and pine. "Can you walk?" he asked. "I think so." He kept his hand on her elbow as they descended the platform steps. The crowd parted for them, and Willow kept her eyes forward, not wanting to see the faces of the men who had bid on her like she was a horse or a piece of furniture. The stranger led her down the main street of Idaho City, past the saloons and general stores, until they reached a small restaurant with condensation fogging the windows. Inside, it was blessedly warm, and the smell of food made Willow's empty stomach clench painfully. He guided her to a corner table and helped her into a chair before taking the seat across from her. A woman appeared almost immediately, her weathered face breaking into a smile when she saw the stranger. "Isaac Zimmerman, as I live and breathe. Haven't seen you in town for months." "Been busy with the ranch, Martha. Could you bring us whatever's hot? And coffee, lots of it." Martha's eyes shifted to Willow and her expression softened with understanding. "Right away, dear." When they were alone, Isaac pulled off his hat and set it on the table. He had dark hair that needed cutting and lines around his eyes that suggested he spent most of his time outdoors. He looked to be in his mid-20s, maybe 26 or 27. "I am Isaac Zimmerman," he said formally. "I have a cattle ranch about 10 miles north of here." "Willow Harper," she managed, though he clearly already knew her name. "Why did you do that?" He was quiet for a moment, turning his hat in his hands. "My mother was sold into indentured servitude when she was 16, worked for a cruel man who beat her and worse. My father bought her contract and freed her, same as I just did for you. They fell in love and built a life together. When I saw you standing up there, I saw my mother. I saw a woman who deserved better than what this world was giving her." Willow felt tears prick her eyes, the first real emotion she had allowed herself to feel since her uncle died. "I do not know how to repay you. You do not owe me anything. That's the point." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "You are free, Willow. You can walk out that door right now if you want, and I will not stop you. But it is cold and getting colder, and night is coming. I have a ranch with a spare room and a housekeeper who would appreciate another woman around. If you want, you can come stay until you figure out what you want to do next. No obligations, no expectations." Martha returned with 2 steaming bowls of stew and a basket of bread. The smell was overwhelming, and Willow's hands shook as she picked up her spoon. She forced herself to eat slowly, even though every instinct screamed at her to devour the food as fast as possible. Isaac ate in silence, giving her space to think. The warm food in her belly and the heat from the stove slowly brought feeling back to her limbs, along with a fierce aching that made her wince. "Are your feet badly frostbitten?" Isaac asked, noticing her discomfort. "I do not know. I cannot feel them." His jaw tightened. "We need to get you to a doctor." "I have no money for a doctor." "I did not ask if you had money." His tone was gentle but firm. "Let me help you, Willow, please." She looked at him across the table, this stranger who had spent a small fortune to buy her freedom, and tried to understand what he wanted from her. But his expression was open and honest, without the predatory gleam she had seen in so many men's eyes on that auction platform. "Why should I trust you?" she asked quietly. "You should not," he said simply. "You do not know me, but I am asking you to anyway, just for tonight. Let me get you to the doctor and then out to the ranch where it is warm and safe. Tomorrow in the daylight you can decide what you want to do. If you want to leave, I will drive you into town myself and give you enough money to get wherever you want to go. I swear it on my parents' graves." There was something in his voice, in the way he spoke of his parents, that made Willow believe him. Or perhaps she was simply too tired and too cold and too worn down to do anything else. She nodded slowly. "Just for tonight," she agreed. Relief washed over Isaac's face. He finished his stew quickly and paid Martha, then helped Willow to her feet. Her legs were unsteady, and she was grateful for his supporting arm as they walked down the street to the doctor's office. The doctor was an older man with kind eyes and gentle hands. He examined Willow's feet carefully, his expression growing more concerned as he worked. "You are lucky," he said finally. "Another hour in that cold and you would have lost toes, maybe worse. As it is, you will heal, but you need to stay warm and off your feet for at least a week." He bandaged her feet and gave Isaac a tin of salve with careful instructions. Isaac paid him without hesitation, and then they were back outside in the cold. The sun was setting, painting the snow-covered mountains in shades of pink and gold. "My wagon is at the livery," Isaac said. "Can you make it that far? I will try." They had only gone a few steps when Isaac stopped. "This is foolish. You should not be walking at all." Before Willow could protest, he swept her up into his arms, carrying her as easily as if she weighed nothing. "Put me down," she said, mortified. "People are staring. Let them stare. You are injured." His tone left no room for argument. Willow fell silent, too exhausted to fight. She let her head rest against his shoulder as he carried her through the darkening streets. His heartbeat was steady beneath her ear, and despite everything, she felt safe in his arms. The livery was warm and smelled of hay and horses. Isaac's wagon was a sturdy thing with a covered back, and he had lined it with blankets and furs. He settled Willow carefully onto the makeshift bed, making sure she was wrapped warmly. "It is about an hour's drive to the ranch," he said, climbing up to the driver's seat. "Try to rest." The wagon lurched into motion, and Willow closed her eyes. The rocking movement should have made her anxious, but instead she found herself drifting, exhaustion finally overtaking her fear. She slept fitfully, waking occasionally to the sound of the horses' hooves crunching through snow and the creak of the wagon wheels. When they finally stopped, it was full dark. Isaac appeared at the back of the wagon with a lantern, and Willow saw they were in front of a large ranch house with warm light glowing in the windows. Smoke curled from the chimney, and the whole scene looked almost impossibly inviting after the nightmare of the day. Isaac carried her inside despite her weak protests, calling out as he entered, "Ruth, I have brought a guest." An older woman appeared from what must have been the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. She was perhaps 60, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and a face that was both stern and kind. "Lord above, Isaac, what have you done now?" But her voice was fond, not angry. "This is Willow Harper. She needs a warm bed and someone to look after her for a few days. Her feet are frostbitten, and she has not eaten properly in days." Ruth's expression softened immediately. "Bring her to the spare room. I will get the fire going and heat some water for a bath." The spare room was small but comfortable, with a large bed covered in quilts and a window that looked out over dark fields. Isaac set Willow down on the bed as carefully as if she were made of glass. "Ruth will take care of you," he said. "If you need anything at all, just call out. I am right across the hall." "Thank you," Willow said, and the words felt inadequate for everything he had done. Isaac nodded and left, closing the door quietly behind him. Ruth bustled in immediately with armfuls of soft nightgowns and blankets. She helped Willow out of her filthy dress without comment or judgment, and when the bath was ready, she supported Willow into the copper tub in front of the fire. The hot water was almost painful against Willow's cold skin, but it was the best thing she had felt in weeks. Ruth washed her hair gently, working out the tangles and dirt, humming an old hymn as she worked. "Isaac is a good man," Ruth said after a while. "Best man I have ever known, and I have known him since he was born. His parents were my dearest friends. When they passed 5 years ago, I came to keep house for him. He has never brought a woman home before." Willow did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing. Ruth helped her from the bath and into a soft flannel nightgown, then settled her back into bed. She rebandaged Willow's feet with the doctor's salve and brought her a cup of warm milk with honey. "Sleep now," Ruth said gently. "You are safe here. I promise you that." Alone in the darkness, wrapped in soft blankets with a full stomach and clean skin, Willow finally let herself cry. She cried for her uncle who had been kind to her and had not deserved to die in a strange land. She cried for the fear and humiliation of standing on that auction block. and she cried with relief that someone had seen her suffering and chosen to help without asking for anything in return. When her tears finally stopped, she slept more deeply than she had in months. Willow woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee and bacon. For a moment, she could not remember where she was, and panic seized her. Then the memories of the previous day came rushing back, and she took a deep breath, willing her racing heart to slow. There was a soft knock on the door. "May I come in?" Ruth's voice called. Yes. Ruth entered with a breakfast tray laden with eggs, bacon, toast, and coffee. "How are you feeling this morning?" "Sore, but better." It was true. The deep bone cold that had settled into her was finally starting to fade. "Good. Isaac is out checking the cattle, but he said to tell you that he will be back by noon if you want to talk. In the meantime, you are to rest and eat and not worry about anything. I should not be such a burden." Ruth set the tray across Willow's lap and fixed her with a stern look. "You are not a burden. You are a guest who has been through something terrible, and we are happy to help. Now eat your breakfast before it gets cold." Willow ate obediently, and Ruth sat in the chair by the window, mending a shirt. They talked quietly, Ruth sharing stories about the ranch and the surrounding area, Willow speaking haltingly about her journey west and her uncle's death. "It must have been terrifying," Ruth said softly. "Being alone like that." "It was. I kept thinking that someone would help, that someone would see I had done nothing wrong, but everyone just saw a debt that needed paying." Willow set down her fork, her appetite gone. "Those men at the auction, they looked at me like I was not even human." "I know. And I am sorrier than I can say that you had to endure that, but you are away from them now and you are safe." The morning passed slowly. Willow dozed on and off, her body demanding rest to heal. Around noon, she heard the sound of boots on the porch and men's voices. She sat up in bed, suddenly nervous. There was another knock. "Willow, it is Isaac. May I come in?" "Yes." Isaac entered, bringing the smell of cold air and outdoors with him. He had changed into clean clothes and looked tired but pleased. "How are you feeling?" "Much better. Your housekeeper has been very kind. Ruth is the best." He pulled the chair closer to the bed and sat, his hat in his hands again. "I wanted to talk to you about what happens next." "I meant what I said yesterday. You are free to go wherever you want, whenever you want, but I wanted to offer you another option." Willow waited, her heart beating faster. "I need help around the ranch. Ruth manages the house, but she is not as young as she used to be, and the work is hard. If you wanted to stay on for a while, I could use another pair of hands. I would pay you fair wages, same as I pay any of my ranch hands. You would have your own room, your meals provided, and your time would be your own once the day's work is done. If you decided you wanted to leave after a week or a month or a year, that would be fine. No obligations beyond honest work for honest pay." "Why are you being so kind to me?" Willow asked, the question that had been burning in her mind since yesterday. Isaac looked down at his hat, thinking. "I told you about my parents. What I did not tell you is that my father died when I was 20, and my mother lasted only 6 months after him. She died of a broken heart, I think, though the doctor said it was pneumonia. Before she passed, she made me promise that if I ever had the chance to help someone the way my father helped her, I would take it. She said that kindness is the only thing that makes this hard world bearable." He looked up, meeting Willow's eyes. "I have worked hard to build this ranch into something successful. I have money in the bank and cattle on the range and a good life. But none of it means anything if I cannot use it to help someone who needs it. So that is why. Because I promised my mother and because it is the right thing to do." Willow felt tears threaten again, but she blinked them back. "I will stay," she said. "For a while at least. I need to earn some money before I can figure out what comes next." Isaac's face broke into a genuine smile, and Willow realized it was the first time she had seen him smile. It transformed his serious features, making him look younger and less careworn. "I am glad. Ruth will be too. She has been saying for years that she needs help." He stood to leave, then paused at the door. "One more thing. I know you have been through something terrible, and I know you have no reason to trust men right now. I want you to know that you are safe here. I will not touch you or bother you or expect anything from you beyond the work we agree on. And if any of the ranch hands give you trouble, you come tell me immediately." "Understood." "Understood," Willow said quietly. "Thank you, Isaac." He nodded and left, and Willow sat back against the pillows, her mind whirling. She had gone from being sold on an auction block to being offered paid work and safe housing in less than 24 hours. It felt like a dream, and she half expected to wake up back on that frozen platform in chains. But the days passed, and it was not a dream. Willow's feet healed slowly under Ruth's careful tending, and after a week, she was able to walk again without pain. She started helping around the house, learning Ruth's routines and rhythms. The older woman was patient and kind, teaching Willow how to make bread and how to preserve meat and how to manage a household in the wilderness. Isaac was respectful and distant, speaking to Willow politely at meals but otherwise giving her space. She saw him working from dawn until dusk, riding out to check on cattle, mending fences, breaking horses. He had 4 ranch hands who lived in the bunkhouse, rough men but respectful in Isaac's presence. February turned to March, and the snow began to melt. The landscape transformed from white to brown to the first hints of green. Willow found herself watching for the signs of spring with an eagerness she had not felt in years. Every crocus that pushed through the soil, every bird that returned from the south, felt like a promise that the cold, dark times were truly over. One evening in late March, Willow was in the kitchen helping Ruth with dinner when Isaac came in from the range earlier than usual. He was covered in mud and looked exhausted. "Rough day?" Ruth asked. "Found a section of fence torn down and half a dozen cattle wandered off. Took hours to round them up." He sank into a chair at the table and rubbed his face. "But I found them all so it could be worse." Willow set a cup of coffee in front of him without being asked. Isaac looked up at her with surprise and gratitude. "Thank you. You are welcome." She returned to the stove where she was stirring a pot of stew, aware of his eyes on her back. Over dinner, Isaac was quieter than usual. Ruth filled the silence with chatter about the garden she was planning and the new chickens she wanted to order. When the meal was finished and the dishes cleared, Isaac asked Willow if she would take a walk with him. Willow's heart jumped nervously, but she agreed. They walked out into the cool evening air, their breath misting in front of them. The stars were just beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "I wanted to thank you," Isaac said as they walked slowly toward the barn, "for all your help these past weeks. Ruth tells me you have been working very hard. I am grateful for the opportunity. You saved my life, Isaac. Working hard is the least I can do." "You do not owe me anything," he said firmly. "I need you to understand that." They had reached the corral fence and Isaac leaned against it, looking out over the dark fields. Willow stood beside him, acutely aware of his presence. "Can I ask you something?" Isaac said after a long silence. "Of course. What did you want to do before all this happened? Before your uncle died and everything went wrong, what were your dreams?" No one had asked Willow about her dreams in so long that she had almost forgotten she had them. "I wanted to be a teacher," she said slowly. "I love reading and learning, and I wanted to help children learn too. My uncle was taking me west to a teaching position in Oregon, but then he got sick, and everything fell apart." "You could still do that," Isaac said. "There are towns springing up all over the territory that need teachers. I could help you find a position if you wanted." Willow looked at him in surprise. "You would do that, of course. Like I said, no obligations. If teaching is what you want, you should have it." "What about you?" Willow asked impulsively. "What are your dreams?" Isaac was quiet for so long that Willow thought he might not answer. Then he said, "I want to build something that lasts. My parents built this ranch from nothing, and I want to honor that. I want to raise good cattle and good horses and maybe someday have a family to pass it all on to. Simple dreams, I suppose. They sound like good dreams to me." He turned to look at her, and in the fading light his eyes were very dark. "Willow, I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear me out before you say anything." Her heart started pounding. "All right. These past weeks having you here have been the happiest I have been since my parents died. I know it is too soon, and I know you have been through something terrible, but I need you to know that I have feelings for you. Real feelings. I think about you all the time. I look forward to seeing you at meals and hearing your voice and watching you smile when Ruth tells one of her stories." He held up a hand when Willow started to speak. "I am not asking you for anything. I am just telling you the truth. If you want to leave tomorrow and go find a teaching position in Oregon, I will help you do that. If you want to stay here and work for wages and nothing more, that is fine too. But if there is any chance that someday you might feel the same way about me, I would wait as long as it takes." Willow's mind was reeling. She had noticed Isaac, of course she had. It was impossible not to notice him. He was kind and strong and handsome in a rough-hewn way, and she felt safe with him in a way she had never felt safe with anyone. But she had assumed his kindness was just that, kindness without expectation. She had not dared to hope it might be something more. "I do not know what to say," she admitted. "You do not have to say anything right now. I just needed you to know." He pushed away from the fence. "We should get back. It is getting cold." They walked back to the house in silence, and Willow's thoughts were a tangled mess. She did care for Isaac, she realized. She cared for him quite a bit. But was it love or just gratitude? How could she tell the difference? That night, lying in her bed, Willow thought about everything Isaac had said. She thought about his steady presence and quiet strength, about the way he had freed her without hesitation, about how safe she felt under his roof. She thought about his dreams of family and legacy, and she wondered if she might fit into those dreams. Over the next few weeks, Willow found herself watching Isaac with new eyes. She noticed the way he was patient with the horses, even the difficult ones. She noticed how he treated his ranch hands with respect, paying them fairly and listening to their concerns. She noticed how he cared for Ruth like she was family, making sure she never worked too hard and always had what she needed. And she noticed how he looked at her when he thought she was not paying attention, with a softness in his eyes that made her breath catch. Spring came fully to Idaho, and the ranch burst into life. The cattle grew fat on new grass, and the horses frolicked in the pastures. Ruth's garden began to flourish, and Willow spent hours helping her plant and weed and water. One afternoon in early May, Willow was alone in the garden when Isaac rode up on his horse, a beautiful chestnut mare named Ginger. He dismounted and walked over to where Willow was tending the beans. "I am riding out to check the north pasture," he said. "I wondered if you might want to come with me. It is a beautiful day, and there is something I would like to show you." Willow hesitated. She had not been on a horse since arriving at the ranch, and she was nervous. But Isaac's expression was hopeful, and she found she did not want to disappoint him. "I am not a very good rider," she admitted. "That is all right. You can ride with me." He held out his hand. Willow took it, and Isaac pulled her up easily to sit in front of him on the saddle. His arms came around her to hold the reins, and Willow was intensely aware of his solid presence at her back. They rode north across the rolling hills, and Isaac was right. It was a beautiful day. The sky was impossibly blue, and wildflowers dotted the landscape in splashes of yellow and purple and white. Birds sang in the trees, and a warm breeze carried the scent of grass and earth. After about 20 minutes, they crested a hill, and Isaac brought the horse to a stop. "There," he said softly. "That is what I wanted to show you." Willow looked out over the valley below and caught her breath. A small creek wound through the bottom, and the banks were absolutely covered in flowers. It looked like someone had spilled a rainbow across the earth. There were so many colors. "It is beautiful," she whispered. "My mother loved this place. She would come here every spring and just sit for hours, looking at the flowers. After she died, I could not come here for a long time. It hurt too much, but this spring I wanted to share it with you." Willow turned to look at him, and the expression on his face made her heart ache. "Why?" "Because you said I gave you spring. But really, I think you gave it to me. You made me remember what it feels like to look forward to tomorrow, to have hope for the future. You brought life back to this house and to me." Without thinking, Willow reached up and touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw. Isaac went very still, his eyes searching hers. "I think I am falling in love with you," Willow said, the words coming out in a rush. "I did not want to. I was afraid it was just gratitude or dependency. But it is more than that. You are kind and good and strong, and when I think about leaving here, about not seeing you every day, it makes me feel hollow inside." Isaac's face broke into that transformative smile. "Willow Harper, may I kiss you?" "Yes," she breathed. He kissed her gently at first, almost tentatively, as if she were something precious that might break. But Willow leaned into him, and the kiss deepened, full of all the feelings they had both been holding back for weeks. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "I love you," Isaac said fiercely. "I have loved you since the moment I saw you standing on that platform, looking so brave and so broken. I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel that way again." "I love you too," Willow said, and the truth of it rang through her like a bell. They rode down into the Valley of Flowers, and Isaac spread his coat on the ground. They sat together talking for hours, sharing stories from their pasts and dreams for their futures. The sun moved across the sky, and the flowers swayed in the breeze, and Willow felt truly happy for the first time since her uncle died. When they finally rode back to the ranch as the sun was setting, Ruth took one look at their faces and started crying. "Finally," she said, pulling them both into a hug. "I have been waiting for you two to figure it out." The next few months passed in a blur of happiness. Isaac courted Willow properly, taking her on rides and picnics, bringing her flowers and sitting with her on the porch in the evenings. They talked about everything and nothing, learning each other's rhythms and moods and preferences. In July, Isaac took Willow into Idaho City to buy her a new dress. The town that had been the site of her greatest humiliation now felt different, less threatening. Isaac held her hand as they walked down the main street, and when people stared, he stared right back until they looked away. They stopped at the general store, and Isaac insisted on buying Willow not just one dress but 3, along with new boots and a warm coat for the coming winter. "You deserve beautiful things," he said when she protested the expense. "Let me give them to you." As they were leaving the store, they nearly collided with a man on the sidewalk. Willow looked up and froze. It was one of the men who had bid on her at the auction, a cruel-faced individual named Borden who owned a mine outside of town. "Well, well," Borden said, his eyes traveling over Willow in a way that made her skin crawl. "If it is not the girl from the auction, Isaac Zimmerman bought you. You must have been worth the price." Isaac stepped between them, his expression dangerous. "You will speak to my fiancée with respect or not at all." "Fiancée," Borden laughed. You paid $600 for a woman and then proposed. You always were a fool, Zimmerman. Get out of my sight before I make you, Isaac said quietly, and there was something in his voice that made Borden take a step back. No need for threats. I was just making conversation. Borden tipped his hat mockingly and walked away. Willow was shaking, and Isaac immediately pulled her into his arms. I am sorry. I should not have brought you to town. No, Willow said, pulling back to look at him. I am glad we came. I cannot hide forever. And besides, did you just call me your fiancé? Isaac's expression turned sheepish. I suppose I did. I had planned a more romantic proposal, but in the moment it just came out. He took both her hands in his. But I meant it. Willow, will you marry me? Will you be my wife and my partner and the mother of my children someday? Will you help me build something lasting and good? Willow felt tears streaming down her face, but they were happy tears this time. Yes, yes to all of it. They were married in August at the ranch with just Ruth and the ranch hands in attendance. Willow wore a dress of pale blue that Ruth had helped her sew, and Isaac wore a new suit that made him look unbearably handsome. The ceremony was simple but meaningful, and when Isaac kissed her as his wife, Willow felt like her heart might burst from joy. Their wedding night was gentle and sweet, Isaac taking his time to make sure Willow felt safe and loved. She had been nervous, but Isaac was patient and tender, and by the end, Willow understood what it meant to become one flesh with another person. The seasons turned, and Willow settled into her new role as Isaac's wife. She helped Ruth manage the household and began teaching some of the ranch hands' children to read in the afternoons. Isaac expanded the herd and bought more land, the ranch prospering under his careful management. In February, exactly 1 year after Isaac had bought her freedom, Willow realized she was pregnant. She told Isaac that night, and he picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "A baby," he kept saying. "We are having a baby." Their son was born in October of 1876, a healthy boy with dark hair and his father's serious gray eyes. They named him James after Isaac's father, and Willow thought her heart might break from how much she loved the tiny life they had created together. Isaac was a devoted father, spending every spare moment with James, teaching him about the ranch and the land. As James grew, so did the ranch and so did their family. 2 years after James came a daughter they named Catherine, with her mother's dark hair and bright smile. And 2 years after that, another son they called William. The years passed in a pattern of seasons, each bringing its own joys and challenges. There were hard winters and dry summers, years when the cattle got sick and years when the prices were low. But through it all, Isaac and Willow faced everything together, their love growing deeper with each passing year. Ruth passed peacefully in her sleep in 1883, and they buried her next to Isaac's parents on a hill overlooking the ranch. Willow mourned the woman who had been like a mother to her, but she was grateful for the years they had together. By 1885, James was 8 and already showing signs of becoming a fine rancher like his father. Catherine was 6 and wild as a Mustang, always getting into mischief. And William was 4, quiet and thoughtful, content to sit and watch the world around him. One evening in late May, Willow stood on the porch watching her children play in the yard while Isaac worked with a horse in the corral. The setting sun painted everything in shades of gold, and the air was full of the sound of laughter and life. Isaac finished with the horse and walked over to join her, slipping his arm around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "I am thinking about that day 10 years ago when I stood on that auction platform, so cold and scared and certain my life was over. I was in the coldest, darkest place I had ever been, and I could not imagine anything beyond that moment. And now." Willow looked up at him, this man who had given her everything, who had seen her at her lowest and loved her anyway. And now I have spring every day. I have warmth and light and love and a family. I have everything I never dared to dream of. Isaac kissed her softly. You gave me spring too. You gave me a reason to build and plan and hope. You gave me these beautiful children and a life worth living. They stood together as the sun set, watching their children play and the horses graze and the mountains turn purple in the distance. The ranch spread out around them, a testament to hard work and faith and love. That night, after the children were asleep, Isaac and Willow lay in bed talking about the future. James would need more responsibility on the ranch soon, and Catherine wanted to learn to ride like her father. William had shown an interest in books and might want schooling beyond what Willow could teach him at home. We should start thinking about building a real schoolhouse, Isaac said. Not just for our children, but for all the ranch families in the area. You could teach if you wanted to. Remember, you once said that was your dream. Willow felt a warmth bloom in her chest. Even after all these years, Isaac remembered her dreams and wanted to help her achieve them. I would like that, but I would need help. Maybe we could hire another teacher as well. Whatever you need, Isaac promised. We will make it happen. By the fall of 1886, construction had begun on a small schoolhouse on a piece of land at the edge of the ranch property. Isaac hired carpenters from town, and the building went up quickly. A neat wooden structure with big windows to let in light and a potbelly stove for heat. Willow threw herself into preparing for the school's opening. She ordered books and slates and everything else she would need. She interviewed and hired a young woman named Sarah to help teach, and together they planned curriculum and lessons. The school opened its doors in January of 1887, and 12 children showed up the first day, ranging in age from 5 to 14. Willow stood at the front of the room, looking at their eager faces, and felt a profound sense of purpose. This was what she had wanted all those years ago, and Isaac had made it possible. Over the years, the school grew, serving more families as the area developed. Willow proved to be a gifted teacher, patient and creative, inspiring her students to love learning. She made sure every child, regardless of their family's wealth or status, received an education. It became her mission to give others the opportunities she had nearly lost. In 1888, Willow discovered she was pregnant again, a surprise but a welcome one. Their fourth child, a daughter they named Ruth after the woman who had been so important to both of them, was born in April of 1889. She had Isaac's gray eyes and Willow's smile, and her older siblings doted on her. Life continued its steady rhythm. James grew into a strong young man, taking on more responsibilities on the ranch and proving himself capable and hardworking. Catherine remained spirited, but channeled her energy into becoming an excellent horsewoman. William discovered a passion for medicine and talked about becoming a doctor someday. And little Ruth was the joy of the household, bringing laughter wherever she went. In the summer of 1892, Idaho City held its first official town celebration since becoming more established. There would be games and food and dancing, and the whole town was invited. Willow was nervous about attending, as she always was when going into town, but Isaac convinced her. "It has been 17 years, he said gently. You are not that frightened girl on the auction block anymore. You are Willow Zimmerman, respected teacher and rancher's wife and mother of 4. You have nothing to fear." So they went, the whole family piling into the wagon and making the journey into town. The celebration was lively, with children running everywhere and music playing. Willow relaxed as she watched her children play, realizing Isaac was right. She belonged here now. This was her home. As evening fell and the dancing began, Isaac led Willow to the floor. They danced together under the stars, surrounded by their community, and Willow felt truly at peace. Later, as they were getting ready to leave, a young woman approached them hesitantly. She was perhaps 20, thin and worn-looking with fear in her eyes. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "Are you Mrs. Zimmerman, the teacher?" "I am," Willow said gently. "I heard about your school. I heard that you teach children to read and write. I was wondering if you might teach adults too. I never learned and I would like to." Willow's heart went out to the girl, seeing her own past in those frightened eyes. "Of course I will teach you. Come by the school any afternoon. We will start whenever you are ready." The girl's face lit up with hope and gratitude, and she thanked Willow profusely before hurrying away. Isaac put his arm around Willow's shoulders. "You are amazing, do you know that? I just remember what it feels like to be afraid and alone. If I can help even one person feel less of that, it is worth it." They drove home under a sky full of stars, their children asleep in the back of the wagon. Willow leaned against Isaac's shoulder, thinking about how far they had come together. The young woman, whose name turned out to be Emily, did come to the school, and she brought 3 other women with her, all eager to learn. Willow began holding evening classes for adults, teaching them to read and write and do sums. Isaac supported her completely, often helping with the children at home so she could teach. Word spread about the evening classes, and more people came. Ranch hands who had never had the opportunity for education, immigrant women who wanted to learn English, even a few older men who had been too proud to admit they could not read. Willow welcomed them all. The years continued to pass, marked by the growth of their children and the ranch and the school. James married at 22, a sweet girl named Margaret from a neighboring ranch. They built a house on Zimmerman land, and James took over more of the day-to-day running of the ranch from Isaac, who was happy to step back and spend more time with his younger children. Catherine announced at 18 that she wanted to start breeding horses, and Isaac helped her establish her own small operation on part of the ranch. She proved to have a gift for it, producing strong, well-tempered animals that sold for good prices. William left for medical school in Chicago in 1894, and though Willow missed him terribly, she was proud of him for pursuing his dream. He wrote home regularly, filling his letters with stories about his studies and the city. Ruth, their youngest, showed an aptitude for teaching and often helped Willow at the school. She was patient with the younger children and creative in her methods, and Willow knew that someday Ruth would take over the school entirely. In 1895, James and Margaret had their first child, a boy they named Isaac after his grandfather. Willow held her grandson for the first time and cried happy tears, marveling at the continuation of the family they had built. Isaac, now 45, had gray threading through his dark hair, but he was still strong and vital. He had achieved everything he had dreamed of that night years ago when he told Willow about his hopes. The ranch was prosperous and well-respected. His children were healthy and thriving, and he had a wife he loved more with each passing day. One evening in the fall of 1896, Isaac and Willow took a ride out to the Valley of Flowers, something they still did occasionally when they could steal time away. The flowers were gone for the season, but the creek still babbled, and the cottonwood trees were golden in the fading light. They sat on the bank, and Isaac took Willow's hand. "Do you remember the first time I brought you here, when you told me you were falling in love with me?" "I remember everything about that day," Willow said softly. "I remember thinking that I had never felt so happy, that I had never imagined I could feel that happy." "Are you still happy?" Isaac asked. Willow looked at him in surprise. "Of course I am. Why would you ask that?" "Because I want to make sure." I want to make sure I have given you the life you deserve, that I have kept my promises." "Oh, Isaac," Willow cupped his face in her hands, "you have given me more than I could have ever dreamed. You have given me safety and love and children and purpose. You have supported every dream I have ever had and helped me achieve them. I'm not just happy, I am fulfilled. I am complete." Isaac pulled her close and kissed her, and it was as sweet and full of promise as their first kiss had been all those years ago. As they rode back to the ranch in the gathering darkness, Willow thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. She thought about standing on that auction platform in the coldest month, certain her life was over. She thought about Isaac stepping forward and paying everything he had to give her freedom. And she thought about how that single act of kindness had blossomed into this beautiful life. They had built something together that would last beyond them. Their children and grandchildren would inherit not just land and cattle, but a legacy of love and generosity and hard work. The school would continue teaching children long after Willow was gone, spreading knowledge and opportunity. And the ranch would stand as a testament to what two people could build when they worked together with love and trust. In the winter of 1897, they received word that William had graduated from medical school and was coming home. He arrived in February, bringing with him a young woman named Helen who he introduced as his fiancée. She was a nurse from Chicago, intelligent and kind, and Willow liked her immediately. They were married that spring on the ranch, and William set up a medical practice in Idaho City. He visited the ranch regularly, checking on everyone's health and delivering news from town. The community benefited greatly from having a doctor nearby, and Willow was proud of her son for using his education to help others. Catherine married in 1898, a cowboy named Tom who worked on a ranch to the south. They combined their operations, and Catherine's horse breeding business flourished. She had 2 children in quick succession, twins named Sarah and Samuel, and brought them to visit the grandparents often. Ruth took over most of the teaching duties at the school when she turned 20, giving Willow more time to spend with her growing number of grandchildren. Willow still taught the adult evening classes, unwilling to give up that connection to people who reminded her of her younger self. James and Margaret had 3 more children, filling their house with noise and laughter. They ran the ranch efficiently, though they always consulted Isaac on major decisions out of respect for his experience and wisdom. By 1900, Isaac and Willow were 50 years old and grandparents to 8 with another on the way. They had built exactly the life Isaac had dreamed of that night so many years ago, a legacy that would last long after they were gone. One evening, sitting on the porch and watching the sunset, surrounded by the sounds of their children and grandchildren playing, Isaac turned to Willow and said, "Do you ever think about that day? The day I bought your freedom." "Every day," Willow admitted. "How could I not? It was the day my life truly began. I think about it too. I think about how close I came to not going into town that day. One of the calves was sick and I almost stayed home to tend it, but something told me to go and I am so glad I listened." "I am glad too." Willow leaned her head on his shoulder. "You saved me in every way a person can be saved." "You saved me too," Isaac said. "I was just going through the motions before you came, working the ranch because it was what I was supposed to do but not really living. You taught me how to live again, how to love and hope and dream." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear. One of the grandchildren, little Isaac, came running up to the porch. "Grandpa, can you tell us the story about how you and Grandma met?" Isaac smiled and pulled the boy onto his lap. "Again, I told you that story last week." "But it is our favorite story," the child insisted. The other grandchildren gathered around, all clamoring for the tale. Willow laughed. "You have created monsters with your storytelling." All right, Isaac said, settling back in his chair. It was the coldest February anyone could remember, and I had ridden into Idaho City for supplies. The children settled down to listen, their faces rapt with attention even though they had heard the story many times before. Willow watched her husband tell the tale, marveling at how he made even the darkest parts sound hopeful. He told about seeing her on the platform and knowing immediately that he had to help. He told about bringing her home to Ruth and how scared Willow had been but how brave. He told about falling in love and the Valley of Flowers and the proposal that came out wrong but turned out right. The children listened with wide eyes, and when Isaac finished, they all cheered as if it were the first time they had heard it. "That is the most romantic story ever," one of the granddaughters sighed. "I am going to find someone to love like that someday," another announced. Isaac caught Willow's eye and winked. "You should all be so lucky," he said. "Your grandmother is the most remarkable woman I have ever known, and loving her has been the greatest privilege of my life." Willow felt her eyes fill with tears. After all these years, he could still make her feel like that young woman falling in love for the first time. As the night grew late and the children were herded off to bed by their parents, Isaac and Willow remained on the porch. The house behind them was full of life and love, 3 generations under one roof for the evening. Tomorrow the various family members would return to their own homes and lives, but tonight they were all together. "We have been blessed," Isaac said quietly. "I know there has been hardship and pain and loss along the way. But looking at everything we have built, everyone we have loved and who has loved us back, I cannot help but feel that we have been extraordinarily blessed." "We have," Willow agreed. "And it all started with your kindness that cold February day. You changed the entire course of my life with one act of compassion. I would do it again in a heartbeat. I would pay 1,000 times what I paid if it meant having this life with you." They went inside hand in hand, checking on the sleeping grandchildren one last time before retiring to their own room. As Willow got ready for bed, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. She was 50 years old now, no longer the frightened girl Isaac had saved. Lines creased the corners of her eyes and streaks of gray ran through her dark hair. But her eyes were bright, and her smile was genuine, and she liked the woman looking back at her. Isaac came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. They looked at their reflection together, 2 people who had weathered the years side by side. "You are as beautiful now as you were the first day I saw you," Isaac said. "You are biased," Willow laughed. "I am honest." He turned her around to face him. "You are beautiful because of the life you have lived, the kindness you have shown, the love you have given so freely. That kind of beauty never fades." They climbed into bed, and Willow curled against Isaac's side as she had done for 22 years. His heartbeat was steady beneath her ear, a sound as familiar as her own breathing. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too," he replied. "Always and forever." Sleep came easily, and Willow's dreams were full of flowers and sunshine and the faces of all the people she loved. The years continued their march forward, as years always do. There were more grandchildren born, more weddings to celebrate, and inevitably, some losses to mourn. Isaac's oldest ranch hand passed away in 1902, and they buried him on the hill next to Ruth and Isaac's parents. William's wife Helen died giving birth to their 3rd child in 1904, a tragedy that shook the whole family. But William persevered, raising his children with help from his sisters and parents, and eventually the sharp edges of grief softened into bittersweet memory. Through it all, Isaac and Willow remained each other's constant support and comfort. When Isaac's back started aching from years of hard ranch work, Willow rubbed liniment into it every night. When Willow caught pneumonia one terrible winter, Isaac sat by her bedside day and night until the fever broke. They had promised to face everything together, and they kept that promise through sickness and health, joy and sorrow, triumph and loss. In 1905, Idaho City decided to honor Willow's contributions to the community by naming the school after her. The Zimmerman School, they called it, and there was a ceremony with speeches and celebration. Willow was embarrassed by the attention but deeply touched by the recognition. Isaac stood beside her, proud and beaming, as the mayor praised her decades of service to education. That evening, back at the ranch, their children hosted a surprise party. All four were there with their spouses and children, along with dozens of friends and students past and present. There were toasts and stories and laughter, and Willow felt overwhelmed by love. Ruth, now 26 and the primary teacher at the school, stood up to give a speech. "My mother taught me that education is the greatest gift you can give someone because it can never be taken away. She taught me that kindness matters, that everyone deserves a chance, and that one person can make a real difference in the world. Everything I am, everything I do, is because of the example she set." So this is not just her celebration. It is a celebration for all of us who have been touched by her generosity and love. There was not a dry eye in the room when Ruth finished speaking. Willow hugged her daughter tightly, marveling at the strong, compassionate woman she had become. Isaac found Willow later in the evening, standing alone on the porch looking out over the ranch. He wrapped his coat around her shoulders and stood beside her. "Quite a day," he said. "Quite a day," Willow agreed. "I never imagined anything like this when I was young. I never imagined any of this." "You have touched so many lives, Willow. Hundreds of children have learned to read because of you. Dozens of adults have found new opportunities because you took the time to teach them. You have made this community better just by being part of it. We did it together," Willow said firmly. "None of this would have been possible without you. You gave me the freedom and support to pursue my dreams. You built this life as much as I did." Isaac pulled her close, and they stood together in the cool evening air, looking out over everything they had created. The ranch buildings, the fences, the grazing cattle, the houses where their children lived, the school in the distance. All of it was a testament to their love and hard work. In 1907, Willow turned 57 and decided it was time to retire from teaching completely. Ruth had been handling most of the work for years anyway, and Willow wanted more time to spend with her grandchildren and to work on a project she had been considering for a while. She decided to write a book about her experiences, a memoir that would tell the story of being sold at auction and finding freedom and love. She wanted other women who had faced similar hardships to know that survival was possible, that there could be joy and purpose after trauma. Isaac supported the project wholeheartedly, often helping her remember details from those early days. Writing the book was difficult, forcing Willow to relive painful memories she had tried to forget. But it was also cathartic, allowing her to process everything she had been through and acknowledge how far she had come. The book was published in 1909 by a small press in Boise, and while it did not become a bestseller, it reached the people it needed to reach. Willow received letters from women all over the Idaho Territory and beyond, thanking her for telling her story and giving them hope. One letter in particular moved Willow to tears. It was from Emily, the young woman who had been the first to attend Willow's adult evening classes years ago. Emily wrote that she had gone on to become a teacher herself, working in a small mining town and educating children who otherwise would have had no opportunity. "You changed my life," Emily wrote. "You saw me when I was invisible to everyone else, and you gave me the tools to build a better future." I am passing that gift on to as many children as I can. Thank you for everything." Willow showed the letter to Isaac, who read it with a smile. "You see, your impact ripples out far beyond what you can see. Emily is teaching children who will grow up and do great things. And it all traces back to you taking the time to help one frightened young woman." "It traces back to you helping one frightened young woman," Willow corrected. "If you had not bought my freedom that day, I would never have been in a position to help anyone else." "Then I am doubly glad I did it," Isaac said. "For you and for everyone you have touched." By 1910, Isaac was 60 years old and finally ready to hand over the ranch completely to James. He had been gradually reducing his workload for years, but now he officially retired, giving James full authority to make decisions and run things as he saw fit. Retirement suited Isaac. He spent his days doing small projects around the ranch, playing with his grandchildren, and taking long rides with Willow through the countryside they both loved. They traveled occasionally, visiting William in Idaho City and Catherine at her horse ranch, making trips to Boise to see the growing city. But their favorite place was still the Valley of Flowers. Every spring, without fail, they would ride out together to see the wildflowers bloom. They would spread a blanket and sit for hours, talking about their lives and their children and their memories. On one such trip in the spring of 1912, as they sat surrounded by purple lupine and yellow balsam root, Willow said, "Do you have any regrets? Anything you wish you had done differently?" Isaac considered the question seriously. "I regret that I did not meet you sooner so we could have had more years together. I regret that my parents died before they could meet you and see the family we built. But in terms of choices I made, decisions I took, no, I have no regrets. My life has been exactly what I wanted it to be." "Mine too," Willow said softly. "Even the hard parts, the painful parts, I would not change them because they led me here to you and to this life." They lay back on the blanket, holding hands and watching clouds drift across the blue sky. Birds sang in the nearby trees and the scent of wildflowers filled the air. It was perfect and peaceful, and Willow felt her heart swell with contentment. "We have been married 36 years, Isaac said after a while. "That is a long time." "The best 36 years of my life," Willow replied. "Mine too. I hope we have at least 36 more," Willow laughed. "That would make us 96 years old. I do not know if that is realistic." "Then as many as we can get." "I am not ready to leave you yet, and I do not plan to be ready for a very long time." They did not get 36 more years, but they got quite a few. Isaac remained healthy and active well into his 60s, and Willow continued her writing and correspondence with former students. They celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary in 1915 with a grand party that brought together everyone who mattered to them. Their children and grandchildren flourished. James ran the ranch with skill and wisdom, expanding it further and making it one of the most successful operations in southern Idaho. Catherine's horse breeding business became renowned, her animals sought after across several states. William became one of the most respected doctors in Idaho City, known for his compassion as well as his skill. And Ruth built the Zimmerman School into a true institution, educating hundreds of children and establishing satellite schools in surrounding areas. By 1918, Isaac and Willow were great-grandparents several times over. The youngest generation brought fresh energy and joy to family gatherings, their laughter filling the ranch house that had once seemed so empty. In the summer of 1920, as they approached their 45th wedding anniversary, Isaac and Willow took what would be their last trip to the Valley of Flowers together. Isaac had been feeling more tired lately, his strong body finally showing its age, but he insisted on making the ride. They sat on their favorite spot by the creek, and Willow leaned against Isaac's chest, his arms wrapped around her. Neither spoke for a long time, content just to be together in the place that held so many memories. "Thank you," Isaac said finally. "For what?" "For saying yes. For loving me. For building this life with me. For giving me children and grandchildren and more happiness than one man deserves. For being my partner and my best friend and the love of my life. Thank you for all of it." Willow turned in his arms to face him, seeing the emotion in his eyes. "Isaac Zimmerman, you are my entire heart. Everything good in my life came from you. Thank you for seeing me when I was broken and choosing to help. Thank you for loving me even when I did not know how to love myself. Thank you for supporting my dreams and celebrating my successes and holding me through my failures. Thank you for being the man you are." They kissed there among the wildflowers, two people who had loved each other for more than 4 decades, and their love was as strong and true as it had been in the beginning. Isaac died peacefully in his sleep in October of 1920 at the age of 70. He simply did not wake up one morning, slipping away with a slight smile on his face. Willow was devastated but also grateful that he had not suffered, that his passing had been gentle and easy. They buried him on the hill next to his parents and Ruth, and what seemed like the entire county came to pay their respects. Person after person told stories about Isaac's kindness, his fairness, his quiet generosity. Willow learned about loans he had given that were never repaid because he had told people not to worry about it. She learned about times he had helped neighbors rebuild after fires or floods, asking nothing in return. She learned that her husband had touched far more lives than she had realized. The months after Isaac's death were the hardest of Willow's life. She wandered the ranch feeling lost, reaching for him at night and finding only empty space. Her children worried about her, but Willow assured them she would be all right. She just needed time. Spring came, and with it, the first time Willow would see the Valley of Flowers without Isaac. She rode out alone, something she had not done in decades, and when she crested the hill and saw the carpet of blooms below, she broke down crying. But as she sat there among the flowers, she felt Isaac's presence almost as if he were sitting beside her. She could hear his voice in her mind, telling her to be strong, to keep living, to find joy in the family they had created together. "I miss you," she said aloud to the wind. "Every single day, I miss you. But I promise I will honor your memory by living fully, by loving our children and grandchildren, by being the woman you always believed I could be." Willow returned to the ranch house, determined to move forward. She threw herself into writing, working on a second book that told the story of building a life in the West. She spent time with her great-grandchildren, telling them stories about their great-grandfather. She attended every school function and family gathering, refusing to withdraw from the life that had brought her such joy. The years were not easy without Isaac, but Willow found peace in the rhythms of ranch life and the love of her family. She watched her grandchildren grow up and have children of their own, the family tree branching ever outward. On her 80th birthday in 1925, the family gathered to celebrate. 5 children, 19 grandchildren, and 32 great-grandchildren came to honor the matriarch, who had built such a legacy of love and education. There were tears and laughter and countless stories shared. Ruth stood to give a toast. "My mother has taught us all what it means to survive and to thrive, to face hardship with grace, and to meet joy with gratitude. She has shown us that one person's kindness can change the world. My father bought her freedom, but she freed herself every day by choosing to live with courage and love." To Willow Zimmerman, the strongest woman I know. To Willow, Everyone echoed, raising their glasses. Willow looked around at all the faces, these people who existed because of a choice Isaac had made on a cold February day 50 years ago. If he had not gone into town that day, if he had not seen her on that platform, if he had not been the man he was, none of these people would be here. The thought was staggering. That night, sitting alone on the porch watching the stars, Willow felt at peace. She had lived a full life, richer and longer than that frightened girl on the auction block could have ever imagined. She had been loved deeply and had loved in return. She had made a difference in her community and touched countless lives through teaching. She had children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who would carry her legacy forward. Willow lived 5 more years, remaining sharp and active almost to the end. She passed away in her sleep in April of 1930 at the age of 85, surrounded by her children and with a smile on her face. They buried her next to Isaac on the hill, under a sky as blue and endless as the day they had first told each other they were falling in love. The funeral was attended by hundreds, including 3 generations of students she had taught and dozens of people whose lives she had touched in small and large ways. The Zimmerman Ranch continued to prosper under James and his descendants. The Zimmerman School still stands today, teaching children and honoring the memory of the woman who believed education could change lives. And every spring, members of the Zimmerman family make a pilgrimage to a certain valley where wildflowers bloom in impossible profusion, remembering the love story that started it all. Isaac and Willow's story became legend in Idaho, passed down through the generations as an example of how one act of kindness can echo through time. It is a story about seeing the humanity in others, about choosing compassion over indifference, about love that transforms and endures. And it all began with a woman auctioned in the coldest month, and a cowboy who paid everything and gave her spring,